In this video, I wanted to do another example of finding the derivative using implicit differentiation. So for this example, we're going to find dy dx of x cubed minus 3x squared y plus 2xy squared equals 12. Okay, so let me rewrite that again. X cubed minus 3x squared y plus 2xy squared equals 12. Okay, again, the first step is to take the derivative of this with respect to x. So the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared. Okay. Now with this negative 3 and the product of x squared y, you do have to decide whether to put the negative 3 with the x squared, the negative 3 with the y, or just keep the negative 3 outside and then we'll distribute later. And I always like to keep it outside and distribute later. I always feel that's a little bit easier, or it makes it so I don't make a mistake. So we have a product here. We have the first times the derivative of the second, which is dy dx, plus the second times the derivative of the first, which is 2x. Now we have the same thing again, so I'm going to put a plus 2 times, and I have a product rule, so we have the first times the derivative of the second, which is 2y dy dx, plus the second times the derivative of the first, which is just 1. And then we take the derivative of 12, and that is 0. Okay, so here's our initial step of finding the derivative. We were able to take the derivative of this equation with respect to x. Okay, so now I'm going to distribute the negative 3 and the 2. So we have 3x squared minus 3x squared dy dx minus, let's see here, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6 xy. See here, 2 times 2 is 4, so plus 4 xy dy dx. And 2 times y squared is plus 2y squared. Okay, so then the next step is we're going to get all the dy dx terms on one side and everything else on the other side. So let's see here. We have a negative 3x squared dy dx plus 4xy dy dx. And that's going to equal, well, I'm going to put 6xy first, minus 3x squared minus 2y squared. So I think I got everything in there. Okay, the next step is we're going to factor out a dy dx. So we have dy dx times negative 3x squared plus 4xy. And then that's going to equal 6xy minus 3x squared minus 2y squared. Now, because this negative is first, a lot of times if you have a negative and then a positive, you put the positive first. So I'm going to do that. dy dx times 4xy minus 3x squared equals 6xy minus 3x squared minus 2y squared. And then our final step is to divide each side by this 4xy minus 3x squared. And so you end up with dy dx is going to be 6xy minus 3x squared minus 2y squared all over 4x y minus 3x squared. And there is our final derivative. So this is another good example of we have an equation in implicit form and we need the derivative of it, so we go through a bunch of steps to get this derivative.